Okay, for this unit, we are talking about geometric constructions with lines and angles. So we're going to be completing some formal geometric constructions with a variety of tools and methods. Keep in mind that this kind of stuff might be a little challenging if you don't have these materials. So do the best that you can with the materials that you have. I also do have some extra compasses and things like that. And so if you do want to try out these constructions, I do have materials in my classroom for you to use as well. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at copying a line segment at an angle. So to copy a line segment, we're going to be given this line segment AB. And so we're given this line segment AB, and we're going to mark a point C. So we're going to mark a point C. We place one end of the compass on point A, and then the other one on point B. So we're kind of measuring this distance. Now, without changing the compass width, we're going to move the compass to point C. So we want to see this exact distance, and then we're going to move it over to here. Now we draw an arc, which is that curved line that you see here, and we label a point D on the arc. So you put a point on that arc and you label it D, and then you're going to use a straight edge to connect points C and D and create a line segment CD. Now a straight edge could be something like a ruler or the flat edge of a protractor. All of those are great options for a straight edge. Now let's talk about how we could copy an angle. So we're going to start with this angle ABC, which you can see here on the bottom. And we're going to draw a line and label a point D. And so my point D is here, and perhaps I drew this line and I labeled that point D. Now I want to place one point of my compass on point B, and then the other end of the compass on point C. So I'm putting one on point B, and then I'm putting the other one on point C. Now I'm going to draw an arc that cuts through point C and side AB of angle ABC. Now without changing that width, I want to place the point of the compass on point D and kind of draw a matching arc through the line containing D. And I'm going to label point E where that arc cuts across the line. And so you'll see here, I have my point D, and my point E is going to be over here. I drew that kind of whole big arc, and where it intersects is my new point E. Because just like here, when I drew that arc up, that length is point C, this one's going to be E. Next, we're going to place the point of the compass on point C, and we're going to measure the width between point C and where the arc crosses segment AB. Without changing that width, we're going to place the point of the compass on point E, and we're going to mark another arc that cuts through the first arc. And we're going to mark that new point where the arcs cross, they intersect with one another, as our point F. So here, we can see that I drew that first arc. Now my second one I'm going to put on point E. Well, I'm going to put it first on point C and mark how far away that is. Then I'm going to put it on E and then kind of add this little tiny like arc right here. So a really short one. And that one is going to be my new point F. And then the very last thing I have to do is I'm going to use a straight edge. And I'm going to connect points D with point E and create this angle FDE. So then I created this angle, and these two angles should have the same measure because we just copied the one into the other. Now let's talk a little bit about how we could bisect an angle or a segment. Now for bisecting, that's when we create a line segment and we separate it into two congruent parts. So we're cutting it perfectly in half. Now we can bisect a line segment using a compass and a straight edge. Our first thing that we're going to do is we're going to place the point of the compass on A, so right over here. And then we're going to set the compass to be a width that's going to be greater than the half of AB. So in other words, I want the compass to fall somewhere in this section, greater than half but less than B. And that's because if it was less than half, these would never intersect. So it has to be a little bigger than the halfway point. I draw an arc above and below my line segment AB. And so you can see I drew one here and I drew one here. Now I'm not going to change the compass width, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So without changing the compass width, I'm going to now place it on point B. And then same thing, I'm going to draw an arc above and below my line segment AB. So now I'm doing it with this point over here. It's really important you don't change the width. And I'm going to mark this one and this one. Now I'm going to use that straight edge and I'm going to place it so that it goes through both sets of arcs. So you'll notice that I'm putting it along these intersection points. I mark point C on my line segment AB, and now point C is the midpoint. So it is the halfway point between A and B. And so that we would say that that point C bisects it. So it creates two congruent halves. Now we can also do this using string. It's quite similar. We're going to pin the string on our point A, and we draw one big arc that goes above and below my line segment. Now using a string length to be more than half of AB. Same thing, it has to be more than half because if it falls short of that line, they're not going to ever touch. So it has to be more than half somewhere between this point and this point. Now without changing that string length, we are going to move the pin and put it on point B. And then same thing, we're going to draw an arc above and below our line segment AB. And we're crossing the previous arcs that were drawn. So we're creating these intersection points. Now we are going to use our straight edge so that it goes through both of those arcs. So we would use that straight edge, kind of create a straight line through. And then we get this midpoint in here, and that's going to be point C. And so that straight edge is just putting a line straight through it. And same thing, if this is a midpoint, these two should be congruent to one another. Another way that we can bisect a line is we can fold some paper. So we're going to start with a line segment AB. Our first step is that we're going to fold the paper so that point A coincides with point B, meaning that I want them stacked on top of each other. So we can't see A right now because I fold it in half, and point B is exactly on top of point A. So it coincides, matches up. Okay, and then our second step is that we unfold that paper, and then we draw point C where the fold is. And so point C now bisects our line segment, so these two halves are congruent. And our point C is that midpoint. We can also bisect an angle. We can do it a couple different ways. This first way talks about with a compass and a straight edge. So we're going to start with its angle ABC, which you can see down in this photo. I'm going to place the point of the compass on point B, and I'm going to set the compass to a width greater than half of AB. And so half of AB would maybe be like over here. I want it greater than half. Now I'm going to draw an arc through line segment AB, and I'm going to label that D, this point here D. Now keeping the point of the compass on point B, and we're not changing it all, and the compass the same width. So it's still on this point B, we're not changing the width or we're not moving it. We're going to draw another arc through this other line segment BC, and we're going to label this guy E. So we drew a short little arc here and a short little arc here. Now we're going to place the point of the compass on point D. So we're going to put it over here. And we're going to draw an arc inside angle ABC. So I'm putting it here, and I'm just drawing an arc inside of the angle. So So it just needs to be on this inside. We don't want it all the way out here, just kind of inside this angle. And now what's really important is that we keep the compass the same width. And we're going to place that compass on point E. And we're going to recreate an arc on the inside. So we create a second arc inside of ABC. And we're going to label the point where the arcs cross as F. So these two arcs were created from point D and point E. Point D and point E are the same distance from point B. And then these two arcs are equal distances from each of these points. Okay, so we're going to label that point F. And now our very last points is that we're going to connect point B and point F by creating the angle bisector ray BF. And this, you would use a straight edge. I want to connect it with this point and this point, so I'm just going to use a ruler or other type of like straight plastic piece. And I'm just going to draw a line right through there. And then that means that this angle should be congruent to this angle. So these two angles are the same. We're cutting our whole big angle into two equal pieces. We can also bisect an angle by using some string. So if we don't have a compass, you can also do this with string. We're going to put a pin on point B, and we're going to draw an arc that crosses both sides of this angle ABC, setting the string length to be more than half of AB. Now we're going to move the pin to the point where the arc crosses ray BA and draw an arc inside of angle ABC. So we'll see that we drew that big arc just like before. We have these 2 points. Now I'm going to move my pin and put it there, and then I want to draw this shorter arc here, and I want it inside of my whole big angle. Now without changing the length of that string from that to that arc right there, we're going to move the pin to the point where the first arc crosses ray BC and draw an arc again. So now I'm going to move it to over here, and I'm going to draw a second arc that kind of touches this one. And then our very last step is we're going to use a straight edge that's going to connect point B to the point where the two arcs cross. So I would kind of draw a line like that using a straight edge. And then same thing, this angle should be congruent to this angle because we are cutting this whole big angle into 2 equal pieces. So that's how I would do that with some string. And then the last way we could probably do this is using some type of reflective device. So we start with this angle ABC. I want to place the reflective device so that the edge of the device goes through the point B, and the reflection of ray BC is shown on top of ray BA. So it kind of looks like this, where we are reflecting it, but this BC is exactly on top of BA. That's why we don't see it. Now we draw a ray extending from point B through the angle. So we kind of draw it along this reflective device. And then we have this here where these 2 angles are congruent to one another, and we're bisecting that whole big angle ABC into 2 nice little even pieces. Now we can also do some other constructions. We can construct some parallel lines. And so there is a video that shows how to do this with a compass and a straight edge. This is just kind of a brief overview. To construct a parallel line, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a line that passes through point R and line PQ. And we're going to label that intersection J. So that's going to be this one here, J. Now we're going to draw an arc centered at J and across RJ and PQ. And we're going to draw a similar arc with the same width. And we're going to center that at point R. So this is my point R, and this is my point S, which we will come up with in a little bit. So that's my point R. Then we're going to use the bottom arc's width, so it's the width down here. We're going to draw arc centered at the intersection of the top arc and RJ. And then we're going to draw this line RS, and we can see that these two lines are now parallel with one another. Make sure that you do watch these videos because they show it a little bit more in depth, and so it's a better idea of how to do this. Now this one shows how we could construct a perpendicular line. This one's also using a compass and a straight edge. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to, using a width greater than the distance of P to the line, I'm going to center the compass at my point P, and I'm going to draw two arcs on the line. Now I want to use my compass with the same width. I'm going to center the compass at this point A, and then draw an arc below the line, so down here. And then I also want to center the compass at this point B, and then draw another arc intersecting the last arc. So that's going to be this one down here. They're going to intersect one another, and then I'm going to combine this PQ here and to make this line exactly perpendicular to AB. And so then I can write that PQ, this line PQ up and down, is perpendicular to line AB because they create this 90-degree angle. Same thing, make sure you watch the video because that's going to go a lot more in depth than just these notes. Now I can also use some string to make some perpendicular lines. So for the string method, I'm going to secure some type of pin at this point P up here so that the string goes beyond the line. Beyond the line. I need to draw an arc that intersects the line in two places. So you can see that I'm intersecting here and I'm intersecting here. So I'm touching it at two different points. I'm going to move the push pin to this point A and draw an arc below the line. Once I do that, and I've drawn this line below the line, I'm going to move it to this point B and draw another arc that intersects my last arc. And so I'm going to label that point as Q, and then I take a straight edge and I'm going to draw a line that touches P and Q. These two are going to be perpendicular, which means that I have a right angle, and I can denote that with that little square in the corner. It means that I have a 90-degree angle. And then I think this is the last way. Yep, so this is going to be using a reflective device. So we're going to place the reflective device on the paper so that it passes through P, and we're going to move the other end until the reflection of the line coincides with the line through to the device. Now we draw a line from P to the line that uses the reflective device. So this point over here is my point P. So we're going to move it until the reflection of the line coincides, and that means that it's going to be exactly opposite of one another. It's perfectly reflected, and we use that little square in the corner again to represent a 90-degree angle. So with these notes, just a little word of warning, I will say that this test, the mastery test for this section, is really, really challenging. What I would recommend, if I were you, is I would go through when you're doing the mastery test and kind of follow step by step how you would do some of these things. So if it says that, for example, I am copying an angle and I'm going to use a compass and a straight edge, make sure you're looking at this picture where we're copying an angle using a compass and a straight edge. That will kind of help you. And then it says, what's the next point that we should do, or what's the next step that we make. Make sure you're kind of following along. What step did they just do in that question? And then what step should come next? This test, I think, is one of the harder ones, so take your time and make sure absolutely that you're using these notes. It will be really helpful.